stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I pledge allegiance to the flag of Michigan and to the state for which it stands, two beautiful peninsulas united by a bridge of steel, where equal opportunity and justice to all is our ideal. Sandy, could we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Malama. Shippers.
Here.
Spolman.
Here.
Stevens.
Here.
Mayor Filkins.
Here. Okay. And then we are going to need the approval of the agenda, but with a motion for the agenda to be amended to add the memorandum of understanding for the COPS grant as item D under the city manager's report, and to add the FOIA appeal received on February 2nd, 2015 from Gordon Maxwell as the new item, Roman numeral number 8.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with those amendments.
Quick, oops, sorry. Probably need a motion first, or a second.
Support.
Were we, I noticed there wasn't a closed session. Were we going to be finishing up on the evaluation? Is that a part of the agenda?
Not this evening, probably at the next one.
Okay.
Yes. We haven't had a chance to meet yet. Okay. Okay, Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Shippers.
Yes.
Spolman.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Malama.
Yes.
Mayor Filkins.
Yes.
It's from the
Motion
lobby.
carries. And at this time, we'll go ahead and open the floor for the first public comments. We do ask, if you come to the podium, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or under. And also, if you wouldn't mind saying your name and your address, as well as writing it down for us.
What's the hearing for the zoning? No.
Okay, seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close public comment. And then we have the agenda, the consent agenda approval. And tonight we have the minutes from our last meeting, the regular meeting that was held on January 20th, along with the closed session minutes.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Support.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Spolman.
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Malama.
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Mayor Filkins.
Yes. Motion carries. And this evening, we have a community spotlight. Marcus, would you like to introduce that?
Yes. This evening, and I'm looking for, there he is. Thank you. This evening we have the County Drain Commissioner, Michael Solomon, here with us to give a report. As council may or may not recall, there was a request for Mike to come to council a couple of meetings ago. We did reach out to Mike, and Mike has very graciously accepted to come and has prepared a quick PowerPoint for us.
That is beautiful.
Okay, Mike?
Thank you, Marcus. Mayor Filkins and City Council members, I know most of you, and my name, as Marcus said, is Mike Solomon. I'm Wexford County Drain Commissioner. And kind of as background, my education was, I've got a master's in forest hydrology from Michigan State University. I worked 32 years as hydrologist and senior hydrologist at the U.S. Forest Service, and in the 12 years I've been retired, I've been doing consulting in both limnology and hydrology. So I'd like to talk a little bit about lake levels. That's the general subject, but to talk about lake levels, we really need to talk about the watershed, the rainfall or precipitation that we get, stormwater, and the Clam River. We'll see if we can.
Working?
There we go. This is most of the watershed of Lakes Cadillac and Mitchell. It's a very large watershed. It's 51 square miles, or roughly 33,000 acres. Within it, there's 4,000 acres of lake between Cadillac and Mitchell, and there's in excess of 10,000 acres of wetland. All the water must move off this watershed through a dam on the Clam River, which most of you are familiar, and it's got 20 feet of gates. So there is not a lot of area for this to move through. Okay, it's just delayed. Rainfall. The average rainfall through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and most of the 80s in Cadillac, Michigan was 32 inches. The chart you see is the rainfall that was recorded at the wastewater treatment, and it's the last 10 years of data. And if you look under 2005, the average for these 10 years is 36.22. And for the last 4 years is 38.38. So there's been a significant increase in the rainfall for an extended period. Months with greater than 5 inches of rainfall are noted in blue, and months with greater than 6 inches of rainfall are noted in turquoise. And if you may recall, last year we had a pretty significant snowpack, and then we got 6.60 inches of rain in April, and we dealt with that rainfall most of the summer. This is a map of the stormwater flow areas for the city of Cadillac, but I'd like to start talking about Lake Mitchell first and the stormwater concerns there. I did a inventory of the neighborhood I happen to live in, and there's about 20 houses in there, and 80% of the houses have expanded or been rebuilt to about three times the size as when they were little fishing cabins. Each home usually has a 2 or 3 stall garage. Some of them have a pole barn, and they all have driveways, some fairly long, others short. When I applied that ratio of 80% improvement to the square footage that I looked at for the 779 homes in the district, I came up with about 43 acres of increase in impervious surfaces. Then this map, the darker blue around Lake Cadillac all drains directly into Lake Cadillac, and the lighter blue up to the north drains into the Clam River. Just looking at one portion of this zone and what I'm trying to do is look at the last 50 years from when the Judge Peterson issued his determinations on the lake level. So when we look at the east end of the lake, we've got the the street of Chestnut that was expanded and repaved. We've got Chestnut Boat Launch and a large parking lot. We've got Lake Street condos, the Chamber Building, Municipal Building, MDEQ, plus 2 additional parking lots, the library, Marina Condos, Harbor View, and Holly Road. And some of that extends right around the lake. The western end is heavily developed too. I think an extremely conservative estimate of impervious surfaces for stormwater is 100 acres around the two lakes. Multiply that times the 38 inches of precip we've had the last 4 years, and you get another inch of water over the 4,000 acres of Lakes Cadillac and Mitchell. So let's look at the court order. The court order is fairly simple. It says the maximum level shall be 1,290.00 feet above mean sea level. The winter level should be 1.1 feet below it by 12, in other words, 1288.9 by December 15th. And the summer level is only 0.3 of a foot or 3.6 inches below the maximum level. But I think one of the very important things, Judge Peterson's order is extremely well written and very perceptive, and I think the opinion of the court that went with it says some properties have been developed which are lower than the average of any year. The owners of such properties have made their improvements at their peril with reference to an existing condition of the lakes and cannot now justifiably claim that their property warrants a reduction to levels which are disadvantageous to other owners and the public. And I think that's a very critical element. The court order was September of 1967. Lake levels, and I knew when I put it up there that it wouldn't be readable, but you each have a copy in front of you. Some of you in the audience may be able to see blue numbers, which are above 1290.5 or 6 inches above lake or above the high spring level. The dam has been open since October 10th. That would have given it more than 2 months to come down to where we had hoped to have it. It's not only been wide open, it's been hand cranked a little bit above that level. So, you know, why isn't the lake going down as quickly as we would hope? And some of the elements I think I've covered. Additionally, there's inflows into the Clam River, and we've got AAR heating waters. We've got 2.5 million gallons from the groundwater cleanup, and we've got another 2.5 million gallons from the wastewater treatment. In addition to that, during high water periods, the ball drain flows in at Boone Road and carries a lot of water during those periods. Another change that's occurred since the court order is the whole Pleasant Lake watershed and drainage was picked up in the ball drain, I think in 1989. So if we open the dam wide open and I crank it all the way open by hand, which the city always gives me great assistance in doing that, I get two results. One, it comes up on the I-beam on Business 131, Mitchell Street. So that forms another barrier. And second, you know, maybe 400 yards down from Mitchell is Baker Street, and I think City Council has heard that before. And when we have it fully cranked open, the city either has to plug the sewer, they put in polyethylene or some kind of barrier and then fill it with sand, or the level of the river backs up and ponds in that neighborhood, causing problems. So we've got limits with the 20 feet of gates that we do have. So what the heck can we do? This is a report pulled together by the Wexford County Planning Commission in 1979. So some of this isn't real new. And the red portion, I think, is what's pertinent. And although the regulatory dam of the Clam River outlet has generally stabilized the levels of Lake Mitchell and Cadillac, the structure is small and the Clam River is impeded in many areas. Large storm and snow melt still cause the lake level fluctuation and flooding problems. This is during the time period when we were still dealing with 32 inches of rain as an average in this area. And then the second part that's in red talks about the conversion of small cabins into larger homes and the runoff caused by that directly into the lakes. So what can we do about it? And this is a couple excerpts once again from the same report, and it says the Cadillac City Engineer and the Wexford County Drain Commissioner should investigate the Clam River to determine what cleaning activities and improvements of the river channel are needed to improve its flow capacity. Whether that was done in '79, I can find no record of it, but then the second recommendation is once the initial investigation is completed, obviously you need to maintain it. Some additional recommended actions that I have talked about. The first three refer to stormwater, and both the county and the city could consider more stringent stormwater ordinances within the lake watershed. I have not had an opportunity to review the cities. One of the areas that new stormwater ordinances tend to look at is not building parking lots for the maximum event, but building them what'll handle the average conditions, and then using grassed areas or other areas that are not impervious for overflow. It's kind of like Myers. They plan for Black Friday, and then unfortunately the rest of that parking lot isn't used throughout the rest of the year. We can also investigate possible increased detention before the stormwater reaches the lakes. And there's not a lot of area to do that, but I do think it's worth a stormwater study at some point to see if that would have any impact. And I do believe if we could do any of that, it may have significant effect on the algal bloom that we tend to get traditionally in August and September. So, and then the third one is probably more remote, trying to reroute stormwater outside into areas outside or downstream of the watershed. Those would probably be pretty big projects. So the two that we can look at, the first one is immediate. We can evaluate the capacity of the Clam River to transport additional flows. And part of the river's capacity, there's a lot of things that go into it, but any obstructions that are in the river tend to impede that flow. And looking downstream from the dam on the right side, which is the east side of the river, there's a fair amount of brush in there that is sticking out quite a ways into the river. And then you get downstream of Haynes Street to Lake Street, we've got some trees that have fallen in and obstructed. And I think that's worth an inventory and evaluation, and see what can be done about it. And then the other one is to evaluate potential dam modifications, but that's only effective if the Clam River has adequate capacity to handle more discharge. The Clam is significantly modified. Mr. Dietland showed me some maps and areas where it has been considerably shortened, so how much we can do there, I'm not sure. The other item that I don't have, because it didn't really work out all that well on the video, is the letter I have in front of you. Jim Tiffany is a respected hydraulic engineer, and He has done quite a bit of the work on the dam. I think I've provided reports to City Council concerning the improvements we've had. We've replaced some of the pivot joints. We've replaced all the rubber gaskets around the dam and done a number of additional things, including the security of it and protecting the motors and those types of things. But I've underlined some areas of the letter. So, you know, I guess that comes back to Jim is pretty familiar with our dam and the river system, and I wanted to speak with him and get his opinions on some of this. In the second paragraph, he cites, as I did, that the dam has been completely open since October 10th. The third paragraph, it is our opinion that the combined spillway capacity and the channel capacity of the Clam River for some distance downstream of the dam are inadequate to regulate the lake levels as desired. Then the next paragraph goes on to say the amount of flow that can pass through the spillway of a dam is a function of the difference in water elevation upstream and downstream of the dam. And that, you know, that's just simple hydraulics. And when I open the dam, there is not significant difference upstream and downstream. And then the last paragraph on the first page, up to a point, the greater the difference in water surface elevations across the dam, the greater the discharge. And that's just a follow-up on that. And then on the second page, he talks about system with small differences in water surface elevations, which we seem to have across the dam. The downstream river channel will be the most limiting factor. And those factors include channel slope, cross-section, geometry, downstream culverts, and bridges. Jim and I looked back at a flood study done, and I believe it was '87. And it's got a lot of the grade levels on the different structures in the river, including roads, culverts, bridges, and that type of thing. And there doesn't appear on a first blush to be many areas where we can gain much elevation, with the exception of the large culvert on 13th Street, right where the wastewater treatment plant is. And there seems to be a foot or more there that with relocation of the culvert or a larger structure or something, that we may be able to gain some. But I guess my recommendation on that is we really need to do some kind of engineering study to update all those figures from the 80 and just see whether we think there's capacity in the river to move more water down. I wished I had a happier message to deliver, but you know, there's been a lot of changes since the 70s, both in rainfall and in stormwater and other functions. I have, you know, great appreciation for people who have damage to their homes from high water. You know, last year I think I had ponded water in my front yard for 4 weeks, which nobody is happy about it, and when it's coming in the house, they're even less happy. So I'd be open to any questions if council has any, or any comments.
Mike, I don't know if I've lived on the lake longer than anybody else. I doubt it. I think I'm one of the oldest at least on Holly Road. That baton has been passed to me, sorry to say. But it seems like in the last 10 years, I'm calling this off the top of my head, that we've had significant, 10 years, we've had significant differences in the lake level as far as in the spring. Going back to 1971, you know, I remember where it was. I put the seawall in myself, and you know, you know where it is because you got to put the rocks back up and everything else. And obviously we have a problem. I'm not a denier of what's going on environmentally. You know, I realize the amount of rain and what's happening climate-wise. But I think that we need to step forward and address this. And I've always been solution-orientated. Obviously, we can't say, well, you know, the development in Mitchell, development in Cadillac, and there's been a lot of development in Mitchell, and I certainly don't want to say, okay, Mitchell, Cadillac, we don't want to get in that ballgame.
No, we don't.
Where we point fingers. But we need a solution. I'm not an engineer, and that's your expertise. I, for one, would like to see something drawn out and saying, hey, you know, let's bring the experts in. Where do we address this? Because obviously there's property damage, you know, and it's just not on Cadillac. It's all the way through.
Sure.
And yeah, you know, I mean, do we need to look at the dam? Do we need to look down river? Do we need to look at the water that's coming in? I don't know. I don't have an answer on that. But I do know that we do need to address it because it's, you know, it's happening. And I certainly understand what's happening to the environment.
We're in complete agreement on that, Councilmember Mellema, that I have asked Mr. Tiffany to prepare a proposal to evaluate from the Clam River down as far as he feels will be needed. And the first part of that proposal is going to be to do some survey work on the river. I know that the city has a relationship with a surveyor, and I don't know whether we can utilize that or have to bid it. But I guess what I would ask is that we all support whatever we need to do this. It's my personal opinion, there's no sense in looking at the dam until we know whether the river will handle more capacity.
I think we need to look at all of them.
Yeah. So we have,
In what's going out, what's going down the river. Put all the options
Yep.
on the table.
Mike,
thank you.
when we look at the discharge from the river and how much the river can handle it makes sense to me that it can't handle a large outflow during peak times. But is that what we would be looking at, or would we be looking at a better way to regulate it all the time so that there's, you know, whatever that maximum amount is, could it handle it now?
Yeah, I think.
Does that make sense, what I'm asking? Or?
Yeah, I'm just not sure I've got the answer. No, it absolutely does. You know, there's certainly modifications. I worked on a lot of the FERC relicensing of hydroelectric dams in the state of Michigan and out west and out east. And there are different designs which will move a steady amount of water down at all except low flow conditions. At this point in time, I think it's the channel capacity that may be the limiting factor, and anything to increase that channel capacity, you know, whether you're doing the cross-sectional area, the gradient, or anything like that, is not going to be a cheap element. But that is, you know, that's the proposal that I've asked Jim to pull together and make. There is an upper Clam River analysis that was done in '79, and those are some of the recommendations that I pulled that information out of. There are 3 streams that flow into Lake Mitchell, but they all come off a pretty undeveloped property, most of it U.S. Forest Service. Brandy Brook and Mitchell Creek are 2 of the 3 that have significant flows. And, you know, unless you went into storage facilities there, and actually both Brandy Brook and Mitchell Creek has had storage facilities on them. Mitchell Creek failed probably 15, 20 years ago, and they did not put it back in. It's pretty hard to do anything. I shouldn't say it's hard, it's costly, and they're all permitted activities. So at this point, I think it's channel capacity and precipitation. I don't disagree with Mr. Mellema concerning stormwater. It's not a finger-pointing exercise, and I'm pro-development. The development that's come around the lake has been a great thing for this community. We need to do it as wisely as possible, but I'm certainly not in any position where I, am discouraging that.
One question I have is, let's say we get this study done and the results and there's actions needed. Who actually has the authority and who is the authority decision maker on that, and same with the funding aspect of it?
Yeah, that's a real tough one. Even implementing the recommendations from 1979 of removal of material and obstructions. It's a activity that's permitted by MDEQ, so you can't do it before we have a permit. I do not see, though I've not asked for a legal interpretation, that I have any authority, but I think, if we move forward on a proactive basis between the county and the city, it's a matter of getting permission from the adjacent landowners to do that. And at least between here and Lake Street, I don't think there'd be a lot of objection, but I guess I can't, until you try it, you can't say whether there'd be objection at removing material from the river or not. But I think we try to go forward jointly and proactively and work with MDEQ to get that. I've got a pretty good working relationship with the permitting people there, and I think it's doable as long as you don't try to totally clean out the river. No, I think, as pointed out, we're all in this together, and obviously 4 or 5 years of low rainfall would really make a big difference. It's kind of interesting if you go back to that chart of lake levels. There's a lot of statistics at the bottom, and I need to credit Jack Lynn, who's a community member, that took all the water level data and put it in and did some statistical analysis. At December 1st, we were in the 90th percentile, meaning there's only 10% of the lake levels in the month of December that were lower. I got to say it a different way. There was 90% of them that were lower. It was in, that high 10%. The same was true January 1st, and February 1st, the reading I just made this weekend, we have at least dropped to the 75th percentile, and that's following two months of fairly low rainfall. I believe it was 1.12 inches and 0.95 inches for the month of January. So we are moving in the right direction, but the dam's been wide open for 3.5 months. So, and I strongly believe that it'll be open until mid-June.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm sure Marcus will have you keep in touch with the council and with the office. And
yes.
We appreciate you coming this evening.
All right. Thank you very much. And I do have another meeting to go to, so I'm going to excuse myself.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this evening we have a couple of public hearings. Marcus, would you like to move us into those?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The first public hearing this evening is with respect to the Planning Commission recommendation for applying a zoning district classification for property located off of US 131 and M55. Most recently, this property was annexed into the city. We do have a few slides that we'd like to show you, and our Development Director, Jerry Adams, will be presenting them. Thank you.
Good evening. Okay, what I'd like to do is, the slides I'm going to show you pretty much are the slides that we used at the Planning Commission meeting. Tried to reduce it a little bit to not make it so long, but is this going to work? There we go. We're dealing with the property that was recently annexed, more or less near the interchange of M55 and US 131. Really hard to tell from this particular map what all properties encompassed, but I think most of you are pretty, or all of us are pretty familiar with the property in question. The reason we're here tonight, and the reason this came to the Planning Commission, and I need to read this, Section 46-137 of the zoning ordinance. It says that whenever any area is annexed to the city, land that is zoned previous to the annexation, which this was, shall be classified as being in whichever district of this chapter, that is the Cadillac zoning ordinance, most closely conforms with the zoning that existed prior to the annexation. And essentially, that's what you're going to see tonight. Planning Commission investigated the situation, and they are recommending that at this time, the R1 single-family residential zone district classification be attached to this piece of property. And go through and you'll see why. We, again, at the Planning Commission meeting, and I want to reiterate tonight, no application has been filed by anyone to rezone the property. Okay, we haven't received, for example, an application to, for example, rezone this property to a commercial classification. Hasn't happened. No formal site plan has been submitted to the city for review and approval by the Planning Commission, for example, staff or the Planning Commission. And again, tonight, just like with the Planning Commission, the purpose tonight is to consider a recommendation to apply the R1 one-family residential classification to the area. And I do, I know folks, there's a lot of excitement about this particular area and its future, potential future development, but we really need to caution you that this is not a public hearing tonight to talk about rezoning it to commercial, for example. We don't have an application requesting that classification. So nonetheless, also too, I want to emphasize that I think it was about a month ago when you set the public hearing, we did provide in the council packet the Planning Commission report, which basically summarizes a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight. We also provided all of the public comments that were received at the Planning Commission meeting were included, along with the series of letters. So just for the benefit of the public, all the information that was submitted to us has been forwarded to you. And I did have Sandy for this current packet. Essentially, you're getting a second dose. It's the same information pretty much that you received before, but I just wanted to make sure that that you had it. The prior classification, this property was zoned under the Wexford County zoning ordinance, and it was had a classification called forest recreation. And what the Planning Commission did was, okay, let's look at, what does the forest recreation mean? And we looked at a series of factors, and then we used those factors, compared them to the various districts in the city zoning ordinance. And we looked at what's the purpose of the forest recreation, and does it dovetail with a purpose section of any of the district classifications we find in the city zoning ordinance? What are the uses permitted? Again, we looked at the city zoning ordinance to compare. What about special land uses, design standards, and are there any other considerations? We wanted to try as best we could, kind of a one-for-one match. I will say that it was a little bit difficult, and I think the biggest reason was that forest recreation, when it was created, it was established within the context of chiefly of a rural community, the county and township, in a somewhat rural setting, whereas the Cadillac zoning ordinance and its zone districts were established within the context of an urban setting, of an urban community. And so, again, we didn't find a particular district that matched perfectly, but we think we came pretty close. The Planning Commission, after their review, and again, let me read this because this is the recommendation to you, Based on prior review, the Planning Commission identified the city's R1, one-family zone district, as most closely conforming to the Forest Recreation Zone district that existed prior to the annexation. Planning Commission felt that the R1 would satisfy the requirements of Section 46-137. Okay, I think I can skip this one again. We're not looking at future rezoning tonight. We're not looking at a site plan and so forth. Those haven't been submitted yet. And let's see. Let me skip that one too. Okay, real quickly, in terms of commonality of district purpose, just to maybe kind of help guide you again, if we look at the Forest Recreation Zone District, it reads, in terms of district purpose, promote the proper use of the county's resources and enjoyment of the natural features of the county while providing space for larger parcels. But I think key is, and also providing for outdoor recreational facilities, forestry, and low-density residential development. If you look at the city's R1 zone district classification and its purpose, it too talks about low-density, one-family residential detached dwellings along with other residentially related facilities. So Planning Commission felt the district purposes had some commonality and were the closest that they could find. Let me just go to the district purposes. They looked at the actual purpose, what's permitted, for example, in the forest recreation and what's permitted by right in the city's R1. If you look at the county, permitted by right were single-family dwellings. It's also permitted by right in the R1. Hobby farms, by right. Farms are permitted in the city's R1. Tree farms, same thing. Public parks and playgrounds in the county's forest recreation, permitted by right in the R1. Public parks and playgrounds. The R1 also provides for home occupations. Those were a special land use, I believe, in the county. So a lot of, again, similarity with respect to the range of uses permitted by right in the two districts. And typically, uses that are permitted by right, they convey a district's intended land use focus. That's why you call them principal permitted uses. And so Planning Commission felt that was a major factor. Also, we looked at commonality of special land uses. These are not uses that are permitted by right, but they are permitted assuming an individual can meet the various standards that are provided for in the ordinances. I won't go through these, but about 40% of the special land uses in the county's forest recreational classification meshed with the special land uses in the city's R1. And this basically was the closest relationship in terms of looking at special land uses. The Planning Commission looked at the various communications that were received. They received 10 communications prior to the hearing. That is, 6 of those were from Herring-Charter Township property owners, 4 from Clam Lake property owners, and you have all those in your packet. 2 addressed or supported the R1 classification. Most didn't address the purpose of the hearing that night. They were addressing not wanting the property zoned to a commercial classification, but that's okay. We listened, and again, their comments are provided for in your packet. Again, some of the comments that we heard that night, again, this is in your packet. A majority asked the Planning Commission to deny the commercial rezoning of the property. We don't have an application yet. A lot of folks talked about or provided an historical overview of past planning and zoning actions, and they did this both in writing as well as verbally, so it was very helpful. No one indicated at the Planning Commission's hearing that they were in opposition to the R1. In fact, if I took a vote, or if I did take a vote, probably the majority were in favor of it. Essentially, and I'm winding up here, in terms of Commission findings, number 1, Commission felt that the range of permitted R1 district uses most closely matched the uses classified as permitted under the Forest Recreation District. As I mentioned, number 2, under zoning, the types of uses permitted by right in a district convey the district's planned land use focus. Number 3, the purpose statements of the 2 districts identified low-density residential as the primary district purpose, so in sync there. I talked about the fact that about 40% of the special land uses meshed with the 2. Number 5, although the forest recreation did provide for larger lots, or called for larger lots, I should say, particularly for residential. The R1, insofar as the city is concerned, also requires the largest residential lot. They're not similar, but again, in terms of requiring large lots, the two would be considered similar. Let's see. I think very importantly, too, the site is not presently served with municipal utilities such as water and sanitary sewer. And as the Planning Commission looked at the other zoning classifications in the city zoning ordinance, they felt this would be could be a limiting factor, particularly with respect to higher density forms of residential uses, many types of commercial and industrial. So the lack of public infrastructure, they felt, at this time at least, markedly precluded consideration of the commercial and industrial districts. It pointed back to the residential, the R1. And I think that's it. Do you have any questions? Again, what you're doing tonight, hopefully, is after you obviously take the comments from the public, but the goal tonight, the recommendation of the Planning Commission, is to attach the R1 classification to this piece of property. Now, obviously, you're probably going to see this again at some point in time in the future. Most likely, the property owners, developers will be back here, but for right now, the Planning Commission is recommending you put it in the R1 classification, and so that it does have a zoning designation attached, and so that we meet the requirements of the city zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, at this point in time, we will open the public input as part of the public hearing. If you would come to the podium and state your name and address.
Carl Carlson. Our family owned the original property on the cul-de-sac and sold it to the people that are probably here. My father bought the land because we wanted to be outside of the city limits, not in the city limits. He lived in the city limits. He's been in our family for 50-some years. You want to join the property, but I also should have the right to hunt and fish, shoot, anything I want to do on my property that we have owned for all these years. I see nothing in here that allows me to do that. I also don't think it'd be right that we have to hook up to city water and sewer and be taxed at city tax rates. They moved our land from one township to another township and doubled our taxes because the one had a higher tax rate than we had. So I totally disagree with this whole nonsense going on. We should have priority over all these other people trying to buy after we own it. I don't understand how this is going through. These people of the land company should at least came to us and talked to us. Very poor deal you guys are pulling. You would think that the people that own the land before all these other people would have a priority on what's going on.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the public hearing and open it for council discussion.
Well, Mr. Adams, thank you for, as always, the informational presentation that helped explain, and I really appreciated having all the information from the planning board that of what took place prior, and helped the understanding in terms of what our role is after it's annexed, of having to get the zoning in place. So I could make a motion to, and I know you mentioned about the zoning, and I know that for the public, that's all listed in our resolution. So really, this motion would be approving the resolution that, as presented, to adopt ordinance number 2015-01, which would amend the city zoning map over the US 131 M55 annexed property.
Support.
I have a question. Is the proposed zoning rezoning for the entire parcel?
For all of the property that was included in the legal description, all of the annex property, yes.
And what's the size of that?
It's about, it's close to 100 acres. It's a number of parcels, by the way.
It says here 140 acres.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of property.
Okay. Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Stevens,
Yes.
Melama,
Yes.
Shippers.
Yes.
Spelman.
Yes.
Mayor Filkins.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, and then the second public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This second public hearing is with respect to the establishment of a Construction Board of Appeals. As previously mentioned at your last meeting, the city does not currently have this Board of Appeals in place. They would be charged with items or appeal items specific to construction, fire, or property maintenance code issues. When the city did have building inspectional services, the Zoning Board of Appeals did serve in that role, hearing these appeals accordingly. However, as required by the State's Bureau of Construction Codes, the city does need to establish, frankly, its own separate board with people on it that have the appropriate background to hear such property maintenance code appeals, fire-related code appeals, and construction code appeals. And that's why this evening it's being recommended that the City Council adopt the ordinance that will adopt a new section, Section 8-23 of our code, establishing the Construction Board of Appeals accordingly.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution to adopt ordinance number 2015-04 to adopt new section 8-23 of the Cadillac City Code, Construction Board of Appeals.
I think we're in a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that was the end of the presentation, Marcus?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Then at this time, that's okay, TA. We'll go ahead and open the floor for any public input on this topic.
Hi there, Gordy Maxwell, Cadillac. Reading through some of the rules by the Department of Labor, I did have a couple questions. I'm wondering what is going to be the cost to the city to have such a Board of Appeals, and where would the money come for those expenses? Currently, the county funds their Board of Appeals out of the Building Department Expense Fund. They have a once-a-year organization meeting with 5 board members. All board members are licensed professionals, not somebody's girlfriend or brother-in-law. They have never met other than once a year for their organization meeting, meaning that they've never had complaints by the general public or permit holders against the current people that are doing the inspections. They do have a policy that if you wanted to appeal a decision, you would put money up, which would basically be the cost of holding an appeal. Should you win an appeal, your money is refunded to you. I'm wondering if the city has considered what these costs may be. Likely you could be busy with appeals. Their group has a multi-range of licensed people, from excavation contractor, plumbing, mechanical people, an architect, building contractor, and they're trying to get a licensed electrician in there because you may have numerous appeals in different categories of the construction business. As I read this, it says that the executive of the city and the chairperson of the county commission shall do the appointing to this board. And you were able to have from 3 to 7. 3 is a little bit short. 5 seems to work pretty good if you're going to have a multi-range of all the different types of constructions that you could face complaints, appeals from. So I'd ask you to consider that. And then tell us what all the expenses may be. Even if there are no complaints or appeals, you still will have expenses of having this board. There will be record keeping, documentation, things like that. So have you thought about that, or can you tell us what those expenses may be, where those funds are going to come from to do that? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. My name is Kathleen Mary Williams, and I live at Moyer Street in Cadillac, Michigan. Our meeting, although polite, was very ineffective. Richie had asked permission to record or tape the meeting, and Mr. Kutcher
Kathleen?
refused.
Kathleen?
Why?
Is this in regards to the public hearing that we're in the middle of right now?
Yes.
Regarding the Construction Board of Appeals?
I didn't hear what you said.
We're in a public hearing regarding Construction Board of Appeals? Is that what you're commenting on right now?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, if you could wait, that would be
Sure.
really appreciated. Thank you. Okay, seeing no one else, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion of the public hearing and open it for council's discussion.
I have a question. Marcus, have you given thought, yeah, I'm sure you have, to how you're going to get the candidates for this, that you're going to appoint?
Yes, there are a number of people in the community that I've been made aware of that perhaps have some of the intrinsic background requirements that are necessary. They will be solicited in addition to putting out a general request for applications.
What type of qualifications do you see the Construction Board of Appeals members having?
Certainly having a background in building inspections would be important to have. Mechanical, building mechanics would be also a desired trait. Having a potential background in architecture or design would also be a desired background as well to have.
To me, I have to ask the obvious, or maybe it's not obvious to anybody else, but it is to me, is why is it the city manager appointing board members to this, whereas most of our boards, if not all of them, the city council appoints? Is that a fair question?
No, it's a great question. And I'm sure that the city attorney can also perhaps advise, but that's how it was written in the act. Why it was written that way,
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, that's a really good answer, all right.
Anything?
Yeah, because the statute provides for it.
Okay.
So that I noticed the language, but I noticed in previous acts that language may refer to the head of the government, like the mayor. The executive officer, I think when the civil service, it was the mayor was that, but for villages and such, and I know the county commission, in terms of the county, it's the elected board, the county commission. That is something we have to do, is with the city manager?
The statute refers to, and I don't have it up in front of me, I can pull it up if I need it, refers to the chief executive officer. In the context of the Civil Service Act that you're talking about, has language that says the mayor or chief executive officer, which describes two separate people, at least as I read it. So that in the context of even that Civil Service Commission Act, the city has adopted a position where it was two different, the mayor and the chief executive officer. So I believe the city charter refers to the city manager as chief
Administrative officer.
chief administrative officer. You know, you can get tied up in the names, if you will, but I think the intent of the act is, at least as I read it, is chief executive officer, which in this case is the city manager.
I was in agreement with Councilmember Spelman. I was going to request that it was the mayor that actually did it. I do, though, in looking in the act, and Marcus, maybe this is a question from you, the act, it's the role of the governing body to determine the numbers, and who did you consult in terms of determining 3 members on that board?
I essentially consulted with my department head staff as we talked about it, as well as with our fire marshal. We can certainly amend that number to a higher number. We felt that starting out fresh and new, looking at appointing a new board, we wanted to make sure that we could at least get 3, the minimum. We certainly would love to have more than 3. 5 would probably be the sweet spot, but we also understand that finding volunteers is sometimes a challenge as well. And we wanted to be able to get going at least with a full board as soon as possible. And there was some concern that was shared about whether or not we could actually do that if we made the board a higher number. Setting it at 3 this evening does not prevent us from coming back some point down in the road and increasing it to 5 or to some other number. And we felt that it would be better to ask council to consider increasing the number down the road versus starting it at a higher number, and then I couldn't even tell you what the reason would be, but to then decrease it down to 3. I suppose the reason could be if we just couldn't find volunteers, but that was the logic that went into that. And this process that we're having right now is the discussion. Should council wish to go in a different direction and increase the number, that would be your purview to do so.
I asked that question because I was looking at other towns and printed some off, like Midland and down there's this town by Marshall and Portage, and a few others, and then I saw in the guidebook there that they have for Construction Board of Appeals, they really referenced, and it makes sense if we're going to have such a wide variety that could go to this appeal. A lot of them have it set up, the 7-member board, one that's a plumbing contractor, a residential contractor, electrician, a mechanical contractor, a professional engineer, and then there was, most of them had 7, they had 2 members at large that were citizens. And I know there was, I did come across one that had 5, and that just had the contractors. But I've had a few builders approach that they've gone to other communities as well. And it makes sense to have that professional background. Right now, the ordinance, by us putting in like this, doesn't state in our ordinance any qualifications whatsoever other than 3 members.
If I may, though, the ordinance does refer back to the act, and the act does state the qualifications. Now, the act itself doesn't explicitly state the different backgrounds. It essentially alludes to wanting to have people that are on the commission or on the Board of Appeals rather, that have the experience. I know the city attorney and I kind of went back and forth a little bit about the composition of the ordinance and how it would look, and we felt that it would make the most sense just simply to refer back to the statute itself. But
And it does on the other aspects except for the membership. But
I just want to be clear too. The ordinance is drafted as having the manager appoint, but you can change that. So if the, and this goes to Councilmember Schulman's question, if the council is more concerned with consistency as to your other appointments, all we have to do is change the provision of the ordinance. The ordinance allows you, the ordinance refers to the chief executive officer unless otherwise provided for by ordinance. So you can designate a separate individual, like the mayor or the city council, as the appointing body. We just use the chief executive officer as set forth in the statute.
thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, I would like to see it set up like the other boards, that it would be appointed by the council after recommendation by city staff.
I concur 100%.
I would agree too, because, you know, remembering when we talked about this in the beginning, there was some concern with some of the builders in the area, and there were some concerns from others. And I think it's extremely important that we go with 7. We can always come back to 5, and that we put it out there and be very transparent, very public about we're seeking people from various specialties in construction to serve on this board. I think it's very, very important. I think it will head off a lot of problems in the future.
if I may ask a clarifying question, actually, to the city attorney, do you know if the appointees are required to be residents off the top of your head? I don't think the act specified.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I didn't hear what he asked.
What, did you ask the
They want
city?
to be able
The question that I
to do
asked.
business if they don't all show up, right?
Well, right.
Yeah, you could have a quorum. Is that
Well,
what you mean?
The clarifying question I asked was whether or not the appointees to the board are required to be city residents. If they're not,
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood you.
if they're not,
It'd be easier to
it
fill.
would be easier to fill the 7 or however many spots. The initial thought on the development or the creation of this board is that we would try to stick, or we would stick, with city residents representing the city of Cadillac that had a background in these various areas of interest. And we were looking at starting it small versus large for concern that we perhaps have some difficulty in finding a number of people to be appointed to the board.
Yeah, they do not have to be.
I
So-
would say as long as they live in the area and they
I
do
would
business
say
in
so,
the
too.
area.
The statute provides that a person may serve on the Board of Appeals of more than one governmental subdivision, which means they would not have to be residents.
So if council is okay then, in having folks on the board that are not
I would think that'd be fine.
residents, then having a larger number would not perhaps be as challenging as trying to find just residents only.
One question they asked Mr. Homier, because again, when I was looking at these other communities, they actually specify, and I don't know if we have the ability to do that, they'll say one of the positions they actually put in as the plumbing contractor, and one's the master electrician. Can we actually, I like that idea if we're allowed to do that.
The statute says only that a member of the Board of Appeals shall be qualified by experience or training to perform the duties of members of the Board of Appeals. So that's as far as the statute goes in terms of qualification.
Yeah, and in an area our size, I would be concerned that we wouldn't be able to set all 7 members if we were looking for specifics on some of those seats.
Yeah,
So, we don't have that larger city around us or location, so demographically, I think that might be a challenge, but.
And I do know we have them on the county. But the point that the one contractor brought up is if it's a plumbing issue, it's nice to have someone.
Well, no, I agree with
Yeah.
that, but I think it gives us a challenge.
I think we have quite a few of those people, those skill areas. And I know the Career Tech program, who has a building trades program, there's an advisory committee that's made up of multiple specialty areas that assist that program. And I'm sure that would be a resource that we could tap into.
If I may,
They do business throughout the area.
if I may just interject, again, I think removing the residency requirement is going to go a long way in getting or finding additional members beyond just simply 3. Whether the magic number is 5 or whether the magic number is 7, I'll certainly allow council to tell me that number. I would suggest, however, that we don't create specific stations within that board, but rather rely back on the language that's already set forth in the Act. We know that we need to have people that have those skilled backgrounds. If we happen to have a couple of people that have plumbing backgrounds, and one person that's a mechanical engineer and someone else that has a fire background, I'm not sure if I want to turn people away if I already have someone with a similar qualification. If I'm looking for.
But aren't we getting applications so we could do some of that screening? Right?
Right, yeah, you can do the screening, but I guess what I'm saying is I don't know, sitting here today, how many folks are going to jump at this opportunity or put their name in a hat. And if we create formalized stations, we may potentially be limiting ourselves. I'm just.
So this evening, could we look at least deciding perhaps the number of members that we would like to see on this board, and also establish that they don't have to live within the city of Cadillac? And then we can have further discussion about the specific.
And if we add that approved by council, that can be factors that we can consider.
I was going to ask too, the timeline, or is this something how critical of a time frame are we in on this? Or is it got flexibility?
Well, it is critical. It would be great to have the city council this evening approve the ordinance as amended. That way, we can get out and start advertising for the positions and bring back to city council. I'm assuming that it would be appointment by council? Is that the?
Yeah, I think that,
okay.
yeah, then it's consistent with
I
our.
want to make this something that's manageable for you. And when Councilmember Stevens, I think, first brought up that maybe we should have more than 3 members, I was thinking maybe 5. To me, 7 seems a little bit almost unmanageable, but I know Councilmember Melama, you said you thought it needed to be 7, so can we talk a little bit more about that?
I always like to go with as many people of representation as possible. I could live with 5, but I just think the optimum number would be as many people as possible.
Well, why don't we
and I'm just reflecting back on the concern from the builders on what we were doing.
Yeah, I know, then that's a really
And
good
that's
point.
what I want to address. If we can head off a problem instead of having a problem, I would definitely like to go that direction. Now, would it give us any could we, if we couldn't come up with 7, let's just say we couldn't come up with 7, could we always go back to 5?
Can you say 5 to 7 members?
Sure. Hey,
Well,
there we go.
I think
Bingo.
the ordinance, and the city attorney can correct me if I misspeak, but the ordinance needs to be specific on the number. We can, just like you could always go up, you could always go down, you simply amend your ordinance and you change.
Well, why don't we just go to the middle of the road tonight, and let's say 5, and then if we have
We
that.
get more, we could
yeah.
go 7.
And if we
fine.
have that
I'm
interest,
good
then
with
we can change it to 7. Then it's
We just amend
manageable,
it, yeah.
it's manageable coming out of the gate for you.
Sure. Yeah, and with respect to the selection, again, city council will get presented with the applicants as they come in, similar to how you do with any other board or commission. And we can keep a tally as to how many
Okay.
have what backgrounds. So,
That'd be great.
okay.
Okay,
So we need a motion, and I will make it. To approve the resolution to adopt the ordinance for the Construction Board of Appeals with the amendments of that it shall consist of 5 members, and they will be appointed by the city council.
This
With
is how I've rewritten this.
Okay.
Subdivision B. The Construction Board of Appeals shall consist of 5 members who shall be appointed for 2-year terms by the city council. Prior to the appointment, the city manager may make a recommendation on appointments.
I was wondering how we were going to keep that in there for statutes, so thank you. I'll make that my motion.
Do we have a support?
Support?
Sandy, could we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Malama?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Spelman?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes. Motion carries.
Okay, out there.
They're still.
Okay, and Sandy, we have some appointments this evening.
Yes, we do. The Zoning Board of Appeals actually has 2 current openings, and it's being recommended that Robert Ingalls be appointed for a 3-year term to expire on February 2nd, 2018, and his appointment would be as a regular member.
Just to let you know, Robert had put a application, or you'll see on his application, for multiple, and was initially looking at historic district, but then realized his wife actually,
I wondered if they were both going to be on the same board.
yeah, she had, number one, more of an interest in the historic district aspect, and so if you notice that, just to make sure. And then Mike Coy, it was really helpful in figuring out skill sets and such, and then
That's great.
he mentioned he would like to be on this zoning board.
That's great.
Great. So this is for the permanent member.
Yes.
I'll make a motion to appoint Robert Ingalls to the Zoning Board of Appeals. I can't find my wording anywhere, so, oh, here we go. For a 3-year term to expire on February 2, 2008.
Support.
Could we have a roll call?
Councilmember Shippers?
Yes.
Spelman?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Malama?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes.
Next, it is being recommended that Carl Jensink be appointed to the ZBA as an alternate member, also for a 3-year term to expire on February 2nd, 2018.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Carl Gienzink to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 3-year term as a alternate member of the board, ending on February 2nd, 2018.
Support.
Could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Spelman?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Malama?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes.
Next, it's being recommended that Ann Ingalls be appointed to the Courthouse Hill Historic District Commission to fill a currently vacant term that will expire on December 31st, 2017.
Make a motion to appoint Ann Ingalls to the Courthouse Hill Historic District for a term ending December 31st, 2017.
Support? I also had a quick question.
Okay.
Do we know the history? I know there was originally 2 candidates. Were they, do we, I don't know who communicated with them to know the history. Are they interested in on another committee, or was it?
One of them withdrew, I thought. Yeah, one of them withdrew.
One of them withdrew. I did not speak with them, but they were both contacted to set up an interview by Mike Coy, who's the staff liaison to the HDC, and he was advised subsequent to that communication, asking, for what availability they had for interview.
And then they said they weren't interested? Okay. I just didn't know if they were interested for another committee instead,
That I
if it
don't know.
was, yeah.
Okay. Could
Thank
we have
you.
a roll call, please?
Councilmember Malama?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes.
Spelman?
Yes.
Stevens?
Yes.
Mayor Filkins?
Yes. And now we have the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. Before I turn this first item over to Jerry Adams, our Development Director, to provide some background, we are looking this evening for City Council to consider awarding services to DK Design with respect to moving forward with Phase 2 of the Rotary Pavilion renovation project. As just a very quick background again before I turn it over to Jerry Adams, Phase 1 was recently completed with the complete renovation, I shouldn't say renovation, the complete rebuilding of the restroom facilities just adjacent to the pavilion, with Phase 2 being moving forward with respect to the more sizable improvements to the pavilion itself and the ancillary seating area. Jerry?
Hello again. As Marcus has indicated, we want to move forward with Phase 2 of the Rotary Performing Arts Pavilion project. And real quickly, it's been several years now. We had appointed a citizens committee, I should say, was created to develop a master plan, physical development plan for the Rotary Performing Arts Pavilion and the pavilion site. That project, by the way, was funded by the Rotary Club. The DK Design Group was the architect, the firm that worked with us, worked with the committee throughout, and did an excellent job. Once that was complete, we then entered, you might say, the first phase, which wasn't a large construction project, but basically the restroom project. We had received a grant from the state of Michigan to cover part of that. And again, the Rotary Club came through and gave us basically the biggest chunk of money for it. And again, the DK Design Group was retained to complete that, to design that project. They also did all the construction inspection. Very successful, and we now want to enter what we would call Phase 2. And what is Phase 2? And a lot of this is going to obviously depend on cost, but essentially Phase 2 includes the complete design of the remaining project enhancements, and there are a number of them, the project bidding and the construction oversight as well. We're looking at reworking the pavilion stage, making it one level, new seating, pedestrian circulation improvements. We're looking at a number of acoustic improvements, possibility of a boardwalk on the west side of the pavilion, some modifications to the pavilion itself in terms of some wings, dressing rooms, you might say. We're not going to tear the pavilion down, by the way, please. It's going to be there. But the goal is to really make it much more pedestrian friendly and much more usable from the standpoint of performances and so forth. So anyways, we're asking that council waive competitive bidding for the design work for Phase 2. We estimate internally, that the design work for Phase 2 is going to run somewhere between $27,700 up to about $28,400. It's really tough to get an exact figure at this point because we don't have a design, but we have some pretty good estimates. And it may involve looking ultimately at more than, within these fees, at more than just the DK Design Group if they're hired. We may need to get some acoustical experts and so forth in here as well. But we do feel that the fee is within the normal range of design costs, regardless of who might be retained, given the depth and the complexity of the project. And it is a complex project. It may not seem like it, but a lot of elements have to come together. The DK Design Group, they have the professional expertise, we believe, to complete the requested design services. As I mentioned, they've been intimately involved with the master plan, intimately involved with the first phase always been, from the standpoint of fees and so forth, and timing and what have you, have been excellent to work with. They've worked with the city on a number of other development projects, and so we're extremely familiar with the DK Design Group. They have a great track record of providing high-quality, on-time services, always within budget. And obviously, I think we all know their office is local, and so a lot of this cost is going to be paid for. Again, we still have some Rotary dollars, and we're looking at the possibility of a grant, and we have some community development funds, as they're called. So working and putting together those dollars right now, but we're hoping to actually start Phase 2. Probably won't get it complete, but Phase 2 we'd like to start this year. Most likely it'll be right after the summer season, in the fall, and then completing it in next spring, if that's possible.
Good.
Obviously, all the construction work will be bid out, by the way. Yeah, it would all be bid.
Jerry, I didn't hear on that list the kites.
I understand. I didn't, just for sake of brevity. Okay.
It hasn't been taken out of the project, has it?
Yeah, no, there are other elements as well. Relocation of flags, lighting, landscaping.
Tree work.
We have the basic concept design is done. It's just we'll be looking at really how much we can do, what needs to be done, how much we can do, and it may be that we're going to have to ultimately go into a Phase 3, depending on this final scope of the project and what gets completed. We're hopeful that we can finish it as Phase 2, but you never know. You never know.
So it's going to be outside of the normal summer schedule of concerts?
Yeah, we want to avoid, we want to avoid the summers. It's tough to try to relocate so many events and activities. And so the thought is, let's try to work around them. That's why most likely it's going to go into the spring of 2016. But we can accomplish a lot in September, October, a lot, particularly if we focus on certain elements. But it's probably going to take us into the spring of 2016 before we'll actually be complete.
Just for council's benefit as well, I mean, there may be some disruption. We are advising people when they put in applications about the fact that there could be some disruption, and once we have a schedule, we'll certainly let them know about it. There's an additional site, or an alternative site rather, that we've already located that has electrical, not to the same capacity that the pavilion has, but has electrical. It's in the city park area, right over the where they, what kind of court was it? Not a tennis court. It was some kind of, there's the concrete slab just across the street, basically, from the bowling alley in the city park.
In the park.
That could potentially accommodate.
Where we have second stage during the Arts Festival?
Yeah. Right, yeah. If we have to use it.
If that has
hopefully we won't have to, but it's tough. There's so many things going on, and we depend on the pavilion. And so we really didn't want to shut it down for the summer. It's a toughie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to waive competitive bidding for the professional design services for the Rotary Performing Arts Pavilion Site Master Plan Project.
Do we have a support?
Support.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Shippers,
Yes.
Spolman,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Melama,
Yes.
Mayor Folkins.
Yes. Motion carries.
And I'll make a motion to enter an agreement with DK Design Group for the Rotary Performing Arts Pavilion Master Plan Design Services at a cost not to exceed $28,000.
Support.
Roll call, Sandy?
Councilmember Spolman,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Melama,
Yes.
Shippers,
Yes.
Mayor Folkins.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. The next item under the report is a request for purchase of work trucks in 2015. I will comment before I actually get into the detail. It's a little confusing when you read the communication, but that's because as I now get into the detail, we did send a bid out. We looked at the purchase for 4 trucks. One of those 4 trucks is for actually the Housing Commission, in which you're not taking any action on. We just simply did that as a benefit to that commission. And also, one of the trucks that was bid as an alternate. We're not interested in that vehicle, but we were curious as to the pricing based upon a specific configuration. So moving forward in the communication, for the 3 vehicles that the city is looking at acquiring, the lowest bidder for vehicle number 1 and vehicle number 3 came out of Galena's Van Dyke Dodge from Warren, Michigan. As I mentioned, this dealer also submitted the lowest bid for vehicle number 4, but the truck was only available with a 6.5-foot box, while our specifications required an 8-foot box. LaFontaine Ford of Lansing, Michigan, therefore did provide the lowest bid for vehicle number 4 that met all of our required specifications. The reason why you do not see a vehicle number 2 in the chart is, again, because that was simply bid out to see what the truck might look like as an alternative, not the desired specification that we were looking at purchasing. The recommendation this evening would be to acquire 3 vehicles, one from Galena's Van Dyke Dodge at a price of $26,376, one from Galena's Van Dyke Dodge at a price of $24,579, and one from LaFontaine Ford at a price of $25,515.88. Your packet does include all of the bid information that came in on the vehicles themselves on the next page over, so if you're interested in looking at that at all. And it also includes the copy from the proposal itself, the details of the proposal that went out.
I don't remember what we do. I know with the vehicles then that will be, do we trade those in or do we put them up for bid, the used ones, or do we, what do we do with those?
Do you know what we're doing in this specific case, Owen? Because I know in the past we have traded vehicles in based upon a favorable trade-in price, and also in the past vehicles have been auctioned off as well.
Yeah, there's one, if not 2, that are probably going to go to the parks, because we have a couple of trucks in the Parks Department that are beyond their last leg. And so there's a little bit of a plan to make a couple of little modifications and then hopefully improve that fleet a little bit that the parks crew can drive. Otherwise, we sell them on a site called Platinum Bids. We always put an advertisement in the paper when we're putting a slate of vehicles or equipment on there. And we did that this past fall and had really good luck with the prices on that. So depending on the condition of the vehicle, we'll take a look at it and see if it's worth passing down and then dropping off the worst one. Those are the ones that we'll get rid of.
Thank you.
So yes is the answer. We'll either bid it, sell it through an online auction, or we'll pass it down the fleet.
Thank you.
All right, do we have a motion?
We're looking so close to doing it.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion that we approve the bids as presented, that award the 3 work trucks to the lowest bidders, with vehicle 1 and vehicle 3 from Galena Van Dyke Dodge and vehicle 4 from LaFontaine Ford.
Support.
Sandy, could we have the roll call, please?
It'll be like
Councilmembers.
Christmas around here. 3 new trucks.
Stevens?
Yes.
Melama?
Yes.
Shippers?
Yes?
Spolman?
Yes.
Mayor Folkins?
Yes. Although, I think we should change the color of one of them, so we have a red, white, and a blue truck,
They're in blue.
instead of, yeah.
Doesn't go down the road by each other.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. This next item is a request from the Friends of the Library, and it's for an art display called Far-Fetched. The Friends of the Library are looking at working with an artist to install, I guess you can call them interpretive rocks or boulders in our trees throughout the city park area and throughout trees within, throughout the library grounds. I think in total they're looking at perhaps 10 pieces of public art in total that they'll be bringing in as a part of the project. The artist will be working side by side with our forester, Al Demond, both in site selection of the trees themselves that would be home or host to the displays, as well as during the installation, ensuring that they're anchored properly and not to cause damage to the tree or to fall out. The art itself is essentially made out of a styrofoam type material. The packet includes an article, or rather a summary called The Proposal for Cadillac Library, with the title Far-Fetched. Talks a little bit about what the Cadillac Friends of the Library are looking at doing, the amount of money that they'll need to raise, which is $5,000, and a little bit more about the exhibit itself. I felt that this display of public art, similar to the Seward Johnson exhibit where City Council authorized locations similar to the Yarn Bomb where City Council authorized that as well, that this would kind of fall under that same purview. Please note that the exhibit itself is not yet, no pun intended, in stone. The Friends of the Library still need to raise the necessary dollars to bring it into Cadillac. Additionally, the timing of when it would come in and when it would come out is still a little somewhat up in the air. The expectation is that it would be put in place sometime this spring and be there for approximately a year. Obviously, if there are some issues with respect to how the trees are working with them, or if they're just not working out, then the city would need to pull them down accordingly. So, there are graphical representations in the packet, and I believe on the dais as well, of the sample of where they were in another city. I do not know where that city is. It doesn't say. Sorry. But,
They're making it up.
Yeah,
This really doesn't exist anywhere.
Yeah, I'm hoping we've done this before.
In any event, that is what was, that's what is before you.
Right now, it looks like chunks of snow.
Yeah.
Art is in the eye
I
of the
could see
beholder.
this.
The ones from the plows.
Yeah.
Flew up and landed.
I love the Far-Fetched. I love that title and what he wrote about it. Just
just as a generic question, how do we deal with the liability on something like this in terms of the potential?
Rocks falling on someone's head?
foam rocks.
Well, and that is a good question, and if I may just go into the packet, right at the top under the proposal that the Cadillac Library received, it does state that for the amount for bringing the exhibition in, it does include transportation and installation, liability insurance, and then some other things as well. So it's my understanding that they are covered by the
Liability insurance for them or for the city?
Yeah, I believe it's probably covering the exhibit itself under the Friends of the Library's insurance. So, And we can certainly request.
Check on that?
Well, or if council is considering approval, as a condition of approval, that the city's listed as an additional insured.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
When we did the statutes, I'm sorry to interrupt, but when we did the statutes, and you may know this, but they insured their statues, and we had to provide them a certificate saying if anyone was on our property looking at them or whatever, then they were covered by our liability insurance. But that was only liability, accidents, injuries, something like that. But the actual structures were insured by the company. So I guess I would assume something similar.
So it actually is the opposite then of what I said. Really?
That the insurance, yeah, typically, I mean, that's what happened with the statues. I haven't been asked anything about these stones yet by the Friends of the Library, but when I was talking with Vicki before in the statues, that was the arrangement that had to be worked out.
Pretty much the only thing that could happen with those is somebody not paying attention, bumping into them. These could come tumbling down. But I imagine, it looks like this has been done before. I imagine they are designed and installed in a way that is safe.
It says they've survived Boston's high winds and major storms like Sandy and Katrina. They've survived northeastern winters, busy city intersections, and curious squirrels and birds.
It takes those one birds.
They really are far-fetched, but I think this is fun. And I
think
really
this is really fun.
appreciate the Friends of the Library's creativity in this and their desire to work with us and partner with us on it and bringing more art to the community. It definitely draws people in. I'll make a motion to grant permission for the Friends of the Library to have rock sculptures installed in trees located in the city park area and library grounds, noting installation likely commencing in the spring of this year and remaining in place for approximately 1 year.
I will support that.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Malama,
Yes.
Shippers,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Mayor Folkins.
Yes. We're going to have rocks in the trees. Okay.
Thank you, members of the City Council. This next item we added to our agenda in the beginning of the meeting, and this is a request for approval with respect to authorization of a memorandum of understanding or an agreement with respect to the COBS grant. The information came out just shortly after the packet was put together, so I apologize for the late ad. But the city, as you may recall, was very fortunate to be awarded another grant through the federal COPS program. These dollars are used to fund the position that also happens to have the duty assignment of being in the schools as the community resource officer. This agreement is an agreement between the city of Cadillac and the Cadillac area public schools that, again, is similar to what we had to have in place the first time that we also had awarded these COPS, federal COPS grant dollars. And that's why it's here before you this evening for authorization.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we approve the request, which would approve the authorization of signing the memorandum of understanding for the COPS grant as presented.
Support.
What role does the Wexford County Sheriff Department play in this?
That's a good question.
Well, could we have Todd come and speak to it?
Sure, would you like me to step up, or can I just quickly address it?
You can step up.
Step up.
But you can do it quickly.
And it says that they're part of the MOU. I'm just wondering what role they play.
That's a good question.
Do they give us the money for it?
No, I tried for quick, thank you. Good evening, members of council, mayor. Just real quick, basically you asked what the sheriff's role is in it. with our memorandum of understanding and our current mutual aid agreements, we will be doing some policing in properties that are not in the city. That would include the Mackinac Trail Middle School, the Forest View Elementary School, and this agreement, I've added the off-site recreational facilities during CAPS activities, i.e. the WEX, when there is a school-sponsored activity, such as a varsity hockey game, or Camp Trenta. They've requested our assistance out there when their football training camp meets. So we wanted to catch the off-site areas that they do recreation that are out in the county. So basically that's understanding the sheriff's included in so that our mutual aid agreement kicks in.
Thank you.
Sure.
But they don't provide an officer to the schools at all?
No, that's not what this does at all. They continue on with their DARE program and such. The COPS grant was written similar to how we've done it in the past as far as the arrangement goes. The criteria and the objectives of the grant changed as the requirements out of the COPS office changed. So this grant was written specifically to those objectives. But this is with the exception that we changed titles. Now we're referring to a school resource officer instead of a youth services officer. That's more in line with what the COPS office has asked for. Also, and we added those locations. This is exactly the same agreement that we've entered into a minimum of twice in the past.
And we had this officer in place since September?
Yes,
Or the
September
position?
2nd is when the officer officially took over that position, yes,
Okay.
the first day of school.
And this should provide for how long this grant would cover?
3 years.
This is a 3-year grant with a 4th-year requirement to retain. So in essence, it's 4 years, but a 3-year, $125,000 grant.
From that September 2014 date? Is that how that?
They will allow us to go back that far, yes. So we intend to go back. We'll be able to draw off those funds without too much trouble. That's half. Unfortunately, that was the maximum amount of the grant. It's half of what the last one was, but it was the maximum amount.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a good program. It's good to get a little bit of grant money for it.
Yep. Okay. Do we have a motion?
We do.
We have a
Oh, we
motion.
did. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. And did we have a support? We'll have a roll call. Sorry, it's getting late.
Councilmember Shippers,
Yes.
Spolman,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
Malama,
Yes.
Mayor Folkins.
Yes, motion carries. Okay. And then the next item on the agenda is the FOIA appeal.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and members of the City Council. A little bit earlier this afternoon, the City of Cadillac received a FOIA appeal request from Mr. Maxwell. The request, along with the original FOIA request and the city's response, has been photocopied and left at your chairs accordingly. As you can see in the request, it's essentially an appeal for documentation for public records that do not exist. The city's position or recommendation would be to subsequently deny that request because, again, the public documentation does not exist. Customarily, we have allowed the person that has made the request to also address the city council. It's not required, but again, we have in the past customarily allowed that opportunity. That person is present this evening and would certainly bring it back to city council if you wish to allow that. And then after that opportunity, city council may discuss, should it wish, or the city attorney could chime in as well. So.
Okay. Would you like to come forward?
I had turned this FOIA appeal request in today, thinking it would be at the next meeting and not tonight, so therefore I didn't bring any documentation with me. And it did say on here, you know, at your next meeting, and I believed I was beyond the deadline that you normally establish for meetings, but I did request a FOIA appeal of the fall Marquette meeting for the MML, and I asked for all the documentation and expenses and so forth on, and I was expecting, because there was a quorum of 3 of you together during that 6-hour trip up and 6 hours back, and it was a city-paid trip for you to go to a city event. Seeing the 3 of you together, that's quorum. And I was wondering about notice of public meeting, minutes, such matters from that meeting. You 3 of you would have to have had to talk about city business sooner or later on that trip. 3 women in a car for 12 hours. But all I received was costs of meals and rooms and the copies of the invoice for the amounts that the city of Cadillac had paid for you to attend that convention. I'm looking at this as a violation of the Open Meetings Act. I would have thought that there would either been minutes or drafts of minutes and a notice of a public meeting in some sort and a posting of that. That's all I have for you now, but apparently you have none of that exists, according to Mr. Besser. And that's why I'm asking for that. Was it, you know, I received the normal redacted, some things I'm granted and some things I'm not granted, and it wasn't spelled out in there what I was not granted. But I was looking for some of those items that the 3 of you got in the car together, paid for by the city to go to a city function. A quorum, that means a quorum to me. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Maxwell, to directly address the allegations that you're making, first of all, you don't have the authority to set the adjudication schedule for when the city is required to have the hearing on the appeal. And unfortunately, given the timing of when the appeal came in, as it interplays with the city's public meeting schedule, we really didn't have a choice other to have it tonight or to have another special meeting called for some other period of time within a 10-day period. And so then moving forward into the request itself, given that there were no and there are no public records specifically addressing what it is that you're looking for, I thought having it on this evening's agenda, short of calling a special council meeting, just simply made the most sense for the whole city council with respect to their own personal schedules and lives, that it would, you know, we're already going to be meeting here tonight, and it would probably make sense just to have the hearing this evening. So I apologize if you weren't necessarily prepared for that. But your other complaint, if you will, about the fact that there aren't any documents, there don't need to be any documents. And with all due respect, public bodies, whether they're city councils or commissions or township boards or other appointed or elected bodies of a local government, or even higher levels of government, they are allowed to transport together, they are allowed to meet together. They're not allowed to do so and then convey and deliberate upon the public business, but they are allowed to certainly be at the same venue, at the same meeting, in the same mode of transportation, going to different venues without there needing to be a public document illustrating or specifying that is not a public meeting. So I hope that clarification helps.
Okay, well, like I said, I expected I would be conveniencing you by having it at the next meeting, not realizing that happened. And I've seen all these other units of government that I go to their meetings, they go to great lengths to make sure they're not violating the Open Meetings Act. 3 of us or 4 of us can't be at a meeting, or the county's worried about 5 at a some of their committee meetings, because that becomes a quorum. I see that at the townships, at the village meetings, at the county meetings, and in people in other counties that I attend. So this seemed to be, there's a quorum. I've had people say, no, 3 of us can't go because that would be a quorum, so 2 would go in one vehicle and 1 in another, or what have you. To me, I'm looking at the community paid for the trip. You knew, and it was MML as the community business for that guidelines for how you do things. That's why I asked for that. So, so you're telling me that those documents do not exist?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something? Or should I not say anything? I'd like to say something before we make a motion. Do you know, like the Board of Commissioners, a whole bunch of them meet for dinner before the meeting at Maggie's. I know that men often think that women only talk about them, and that you assume that if we're in a car, the only thing we have to talk about is city business, but we are all very aware of the guidelines of the Open Meetings Act, and we had plenty to talk about that was not city business, and we actually made sure that we didn't even come close to that line, talking about other things in the community that aren't city business. We talked about our kids, we listened to music, we talked about other things that we do in our lives. Our lives are not just city business, okay?
I looked for other opportunities to ride up there with other people, and none of those schedules were fitting mine. I didn't really want to leave when we did, but I did. And for me, making the decision was based on the fact that it's a really long drive, and it's no fun to go by yourself, for one thing, but also because I wanted to save the city money. And for them to pay for me driving alone up there by myself, it just seemed like an added expense that we didn't need. But yeah, we're totally aware of the fact that we can't talk about city business.
As with lots of other places that you see, the group of us, will be in various other places. If you're going to represent at a established meeting, talk about sewers, we want to be careful to not have a quorum, but in social situations or in other things, quite often we're in the same place at the same time, and not just the 3 of us. I mean, I've been in places with various other ones of these cats.
And especially with Marquette being so far out of the way, I'm sure there were a lot of municipalities that rode together to that event.
Okay, do we have a motion?
I'd like to comment a minute. I think that, I've been on here for 4 years, not as long as some of you have. But I know that in those 4 years, I know I have tried, and I know there have been situations where a former mayor and Mr. Stevens were at an event, and I turned around and went the other way. Only because I did not want anyone to think that I was violating that act. And I think when we're in public life, we're in a fishbowl. And I think it's very easy for people, and so all you have to do is listen to the news today, for people who are in public life to be accused of something that we did do or we didn't do. And I think it's extremely important that socially, I have gone to the Legion at times and have seen Mr. Barnett and at the time, and Mr. Stevens, and I turned around and went the other way. And I just think that it's extremely important. And I know that I'm not familiar with the county commissioners having supper afterwards or having a bite to eat or whatever. But if they are, I would warn them about the same thing. It's very easy when you're out in public for people to second guess what your motives are. And I think it's better to prevent that. And I think we have to be very, very careful because we are in a fishbowl.
it may be, I know they've had the different trainings on the Open Meetings Act, as well as, I know I've talked about us having our own policies, whether it's how long we keep minutes and such, but that would maybe be something we would address in a policy as well, of trying to determine, the difference.
Well, I think that we all understand the Open Meetings Act, so.
Yeah, I don't need to be schooled on that.
Well, there's a difference. I'm not schooling. I said we could have our own policy, and just like I'm not schooling any staff when I say we don't have to just hold documents for a year and one day. We could have our policy that addresses, and there is some clarity. This is schooling me then, apparently, because I never thought we could do, I always was cautious of that, or we had been warned of, like, when you're in a closed setting like that of transporting. So this is schooling to me then. So I'm not trying to school. I'm just saying I think that would help clarify as well, because I was not thinking we could, but that's probably a gray area.
Mr. Homier, is it a gray area? Because, boy, all those municipalities that came up in their vans.
I think there are a lot of municipal officials who carpool to events. I mean, everybody understands, at least our clients understand, that they are prevented from deliberating on public policy and making decisions when you have a quorum present. That does not forbid you to carpool, does not forbid you to interact socially, does not forbid you to go out to dinner. Will it raise some questions sometimes? Yes, it will raise some questions from people who may otherwise see that as individuals out and about socializing or traveling. But it does not constitute a violation of the Open Meetings Act.
But getting back on this, so initially, the appeal is requesting documents. Is that simply the appeal?
Correct.
And we are stating that there's no documents there's no documents here that are relevant to that.
There's no documents responsive to the request, and I would further add that there's really not a request here for documents, even in the appeal itself. So, I mean, you can, I suppose, characterize the appeal one of several ways. The appeal is the denial of my recent FOIA seeking the city's admission that 3 council members were together for a 12-hour round trip to Marquette, Michigan. I don't think there's been a denial of that fact. The question is, were there any documents responsive to that request, public records, which is what FOIA is for. FOIA is not question and answer. FOIA is request for public records. To the extent there were public records requested, the city does not have any public records within the original request and responsive to that request. So even if you wanted to overturn the decision, there are no documents to provide, which is why the city council should deny the appeal.
There would be no mileage records?
Those have already been provided, though. But that was another request for all of the expenses, yeah.
All right.
We're just glancing through the letters. So this top letter was, that was sent out today?
No, this is just, sorry, is there another question?
No.
No, the top letter in the packet that's before you is the draft letter that was composed this afternoon after receipt of the request for documentation that does not exist. The top letter has been drafted in the form of being a denial of the request. And it has not gone out because we're waiting, obviously, for council action accordingly.
Thank you.
Okay. Could someone provide a motion?
I'll make a motion to deny the FOIA request by Gordon Maxwell for the, what? The appeal, based on the information provided, that no such document was requested or exists.
Do we have a support?
Support.
Sandy, could we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Spulman,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Melama,
Yes.
Shippers,
Yes.
Mayor Filkins.
Yes. Motion carries. Okay, next up on our agenda, we have the minutes of boards and commissions. We have the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting held on December 16th, the minutes of the Cadillac Wexford Airport Authority meeting held on January 15th, and the minutes of the Downtown Development Authority that was held on December 10th for our review as you would like. And so at this time, we'll go ahead and open the floor for the second public comment. We do ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes, and if you would please provide your name and address when you come to the podium.
Well, I'll try this again. Good evening, council members, and I appreciate the chance to speak. And before I start, I just want to verify that just because I don't agree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. Our meeting with Mr. Petra and the other gentleman was very ineffective, which is what I expected. Richie Harris asked for permission to record on tape, and Mr. Petra refused. Why? This would have been advantageous to everyone concerned. Why are we complaining in the first place? Well, because rules and regulations are either being skirted around or actually not followed, as stated in our present charter and ethic code. Excuse the word ethic. Take it away. Mrs. Filkins' excuse for not recusing herself from attending closed meeting and voting was because she was following advice from our city attorney, Mr. Homier. Well, you know what? What if he was wrong? Attorneys can be wrong. Isn't that right?
Once in a while.
Okay. As we have no ethics ordinance, I understood Mr. Fletcher to relate to us that we now needed to get a lawyer, go to the prosecuting attorney, or the attorney general. And earlier on in a meeting, Mrs. Shipper stated that she thought if a complaint was not valid, the person should be sued. Now, is that the process we're going to follow now? You know, I'd like to know ahead of time, because I probably have more complaints. Or are we going to, in the future, change the rules to fit the problem to suppress any future complaints? I heard a little story in a restaurant one day, and I was just having coffee and a roll, and a man and woman sat next to me, and the man goes, actually what he said was, there isn't much sense in taking a complaint before the city council because we are now under a dictatorship. Well, I kind of thought about that. But, you know, really? Most of the business is cleared with the 3 women making decisions. And this is for our city of Cadillac, a population of 10,000 people. Well, this doesn't sit right with me, and I don't know if I can do anything about it, but I'll probably try. Well, the last I've got to say is, you know, I left there with a feeling that we really have no place to turn to, and the rules and things maybe are being screwed around and not followed because they don't have anybody to answer to. Who do you have to answer to? Yourself? Without the person being able to complain without the fear of being sued, who are we going to answer to? That's all I got. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Loretta DeJulian Snyder. We own 2 properties on Lake Cadillac, 1107 Sunset Lane and 2404 Sunnyside Drive. I am going to behave myself because my handsome son Rock is married to his beautiful daughter Sherry, so he probably will keep an eye on me. But I'd like you to pass this around. It is an article on the judge's ruling. Now, Mike Solomon, I want to thank you, Marcus, for having him here. I don't agree with a lot of things he said because he has not done his job properly, and I don't believe my husband doesn't about these big buildings going out on Lake Mitchell, and that's what's putting everything out. But we have had a mess since he took over in 2001. But I'm hoping he will do what he says and try to get this moving in the right condition, in the right area, so we don't have water in our homes. And as I know, some of the condos on the West Shore have water in their crawl spaces. People you know, a lot of water, and there's nothing they can do about it. They think they can fill it up with sand. Doesn't work. I want you to know that we had to cut off 19 inches of our floor, not the floor, of the wall in our basement. There was a room that is beautiful, with beautiful sandstone, a grill, everything. We can't even use the room now. And I have big feelings about this. I want to start using the room. And if this thing isn't corrected, we can't expect a lawsuit. I want to tell you that this summer at the film festival in Traverse City, I fell on one of the tree grates and broke my ankle. I called a couple days of healing. I called Traverse City and spoke with the city manager and said if those tree grates were not corrected, he could expect a lawsuit. 2 days later, I received a call. Oh, and I also wanted 2 bricks put in there where the Horizon bookstore is in Traverse City. 2 bricks were missing. And I want you to know, 2 days later, I received a call from the city manager's office. The secretary told me they were already working on the tree grates, and they have been correcting those tree grates. They started immediately. They look great now. So, you know, we don't have a problem there. But I do think that Mike Solomon has ratcheted up the dam a little bit since I was here the last time, because we do have some pump in our basement. We can go down and look at the water, see where it is, and it's a little bit lower. I wonder who put in that measurement that he is reading out there at Lake Mitchell. A few years back, there were 2. That was after they put in the new walkway there at the state park, on the state park side. There were 2 put in. 1 was put in by a surveyor. I'm not sure how Mike Solomon's was put in. But I want to thank you for going forward with this. Maybe we'll have some changes. Thank you very much, Mr. Malama. Thank you, Sherry Spoman. Thank you to Art Stevens for speaking up. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no one else, we'll close public comment. And move to good of the order. And this evening, we'll start with Councilmember Malama.
All right, couple things. February 10th, we have a Cadillac Area Manufacturers Association meeting next week, Tuesday, and it'll be at Cadillac Fabrication, and they are doing some very innovative things, and it should be an excellent location. We have an attorney coming out of Lansing that will be speaking at the Michigan Manufacturers Association Convention this May, and he'll be talking about labor relations. and it is free to CAMA and MMA members. And no offense, Mike, but I can't remember where you can talk to attorney free. So it's a good deal. The other thing is our coffee and solutions will be February 11th on a Wednesday, and it will be at Berkey's, correct?
Where it's going to be.
Correct. All right. And we had an excellent turnout last time. Hope to have some answers for some of the people. And anyway, the other thing is that I want to mention here, I received a lot of calls at our last council meeting and comments about the closed session and the misunderstanding when we came back into open session concerning the city manager's evaluation. And I was kind of under the impression that we would have another session, but I could be wrong. But I was under that impression. I would highly suggest that at our next council meeting that we finish up and we have a public vote, because I think it's only fair to the city manager, and I think it's fair to the public that we be transparent and deal with what we have communicated that we were going to deal with. And I would hope that that could be on the agenda. Thank you.
Councilmember Stevens?
First, wanted to echo thank you for having Mr. Solomon present today. And I don't know if I was the only one that, I'm still curious, and I don't know how to get the answers, if we could maybe have the answers of, like, the authorities on this in terms of each of those. What's the responsibility, say? Do we have any as a council? Does it under the county? Is it under the DNR and all those things? But it would be nice to get an understanding of that in terms of knowing what authorities each person has. Or I shouldn't say persons, but groups to know, because that's something I really don't have a clue on. Secondly, I wanted to just echo again, Mr. Adams, thank you for the nice presentation for the public hearing. It's nice when your presentations and the package you put together are phenomenal, and it's really helpful as a council. So I know that it takes a lot of time to do those, and it's very much appreciated. Thirdly, I just wanted to again ask if we could look at looking at maybe coming up with some consistency in terms of on the special meetings. And Mr. Petch, I know, like last April in the summer meeting, we had a Friday afternoon meeting and then a Friday morning at 7:30. And that 7:30 meeting ahead of time, I know that that a couple of us weren't able to attend because we weren't told of the times ahead of time. And the answer at the time given was once there was a quorum that was able to make it, they just set the meeting. But knowing that a couple of us couldn't make it, the meeting proceeded. And I just think it's important that we have consistency. I don't know who, if the city manager has that authority to cancel a meeting, but it needs to be consistent. I hope everybody would appreciate that. I know we had one Monday and that got canceled. We still would have had a quorum, and I just want to make sure we're consistent, because in August I would have loved to have made that one. And
Councilmember Stevens, if I may interrupt, when the city clerk polls the city council, everyone is getting the same information with respect to potential meeting dates and times. I think with respect to the meeting that happened in August, I'm not sure if the meeting actually happened, if it was the one with respect to going into a closed session, because we didn't have the necessary members present to get into it. And I might be mistaken, and I apologize if I am.
Yeah, you are.
But okay, so then I apologize if I am with the dates. But with respect to the special meeting, that was for the purposes of goal setting. and when the city clerk polled the city council, there was not going to be a quorum for that Monday. In addition, the mayor was also sick, and with the mayor being ill, along with responses that were already received, and then an additional response to someone else not being able to make it, we did not have a quorum, which is why we canceled and we'll be looking for another date.
So that you're saying the meeting was canceled because we didn't have a quorum?
I'm saying that the meeting was canceled because, one, we didn't have a quorum based upon information that was provided to the city clerk initially, and two, because the mayor, as well as at least one other council member, was not going to be able to attend, and this was a work session. This was not a session where the council was taking action, but rather a session where we were trying to get the council together to go through an item, and it was important to try to have as many people there as possible. So
I think you probably just helped solidify my whole argument. Those other two meetings I referred to, we were taking action. It was taking council action, and so...
They were not work sessions, correct.
Correct. So my request, which it sounds like it's not going to be listened to, is that we get consistent. I just think it shouldn't be a matter of, we consistently do it. And I rescheduled my Monday appointment and finally got to travel to Marquette Thursday in the storm, but to make sure that, and I understand people can't make it, but, and I will correct you on this now that you've decided to interrupt on that, is that last August, we didn't, not all of us did know ahead of time of the 7:30 meeting, and it was just set because you had a quorum that could make it. And so I'm just asking for consistency as we schedule meetings.
All right, let's go ahead and move on.
I guess
Did
we
you have
will.
something else?
Nope, you're good. You can.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Spillman?
Speaking of meetings, when's our next meeting? Are we meeting on the 16th, or that's a holiday?
What is the holiday?
President's Day.
We are meeting. It is not a holiday.
It's not a city
recognized
holiday?
by the city. Correct.
Okay. I thought it was a good meeting tonight. Not just now hearing some of the comments, but before that, I thought it was a really good meeting, and I appreciate a lot of the discussion that we had. I thought it was really good discussion. We're not always going to agree on everything, but if we can, listen to each other and move forward the way we feel is best, that I don't know what more you can ask for. I'm really excited to see the Rotary Pavilion project moving forward. I appreciate that. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Shivers?
All right. First of all, with regards to Monday's meeting, I apologize for not being able to attend and have that be at the last minute. My mother was gravely ill and I had to go to Chicago. I also understand that were there only 2 members who responded that they were able to attend. I believe that was the case, that 2 members had responded they were able to attend, which was one of the reasons why I didn't race back through the storm. So letting that go. Youth Council, also while I was gone, Youth Council had its first preliminary meeting, and I'd like to thank Mr. Petcha, and I believe Mayor Filkins sat in for me as I was driving frantically to the hospital. I appreciate that very much. We will be having another meeting. We have more applicants that we will be meeting with to talk to, and then our next meeting will be on February 18th. From 4 to 5 p.m. right here. This would be, if you want to come and see some of our youthful stars in our community, that might be a good thing to attend. We have lots of discord that continues in this community, and I've heard from several sources of meetings that have taken place in Bill Barnett's office that are then followed by FOIA requests and followed by other written complaints and things like that. And these are things that it makes me kind of crazy. I mean, we all have known, I've said this before, that clearly these attacks are a coordinated effort. And with folks in the community reporting that meetings of the people that are bringing these attacks are taking place in Bill Barnett's office, and that some council members have even been present or seen to be going in. I don't know what the story is with that, but finding this out today, that these meetings took place like last Thursday, and then there's new professionally written FOIA appeals, and we have a citizen who sues the city and reports that an anonymous attorney in the community is funding this lawsuit. I think that maybe we all need to ask ourselves, if there is somebody that has issues and is sending other people to pursue those issues, if you are one of those people pursuing those issues for someone else, you need to ask yourself, why is that person himself or himself not the one pursuing those questions? I think this is really important. I know I myself have been asked and have heard from Mr. Barnett, no, this can't come from me. Well, I think you need to ask yourself if this is in true happening. And we talk about the impression of, the three of us driving together to Marquette, and the impression of community members meeting with, the former mayor, and then followed by a barrage of complaints towards the city. How does that appear? So I think as we try to move forward, and with all these amazing things that are happening in our community, there's still people trying to change the past. And this can't happen. That's like the definition of insanity, is to try to change the past. And setting things up and trying to set people up for political campaigns in the future, and by providing, a barrage of fodder that will no doubt be used in future political campaigns. Ask yourself, what is the real purpose of this? Is this for the good of all of us? Is this for the good of our community? I think we all need to really examine that ourselves. That's all.
Okay, thank you. All right, I have several things. The first of which, yes. I don't want to miss you.
Just a quick announcement.
Okay, thank you.
There's been a gathering of selected stakeholders. I've been working with Nan Taylor, who's chair of the HDC, for the purposes of putting a committee together, as we discussed previously, for essentially spitballing ideas, adaptive reuse ideas and concepts with the Cobbs and Mitchell building. Had the opportunity last week to actually take a look inside the facility, and certainly it does need work, but it's also very majestic as well. The floors, the inlays, the wood is just really remarkable and beautiful how it's stood up to the test of time. That group has not yet met, but as they meet and as ideas start to form together, certainly from time to time I will brief the council and keep everyone in the loop. As previously mentioned, we're just on the precipice of the process, the legal process that's currently occurring on the building itself. And so the hope is that perhaps this group will help come up with some ideas, maybe even be able to help the property owner in securing a new owner for the building. And should that not be the case, then certainly the city, at such time that the building may come back to us, may then have some opportunities to look forward to and implement. So
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, this week in Cadillac, we have the Snow Festival coming, and we're pretty excited about that. I think the Visitors Bureau has done just a dynamic job of making some changes this year. Thursday night is the chili cook-off, and if none of you have ever gone to that, it's a ton of fun, and it's really good. So that's going to be happening this weekend. I did have the opportunity over the weekend. State Representative Potvin and Darwin Boer, Mr. Potvin is the one who invites the legislatures to Cadillac area for snowmobiling and skiing, and we all had dinner together on Saturday evening, and they love Cadillac. And it was nice to have the opportunity to chat with them about what's going on down in Lansing and how much they appreciate the hospitality of Cadillac. Today, Monday, actually was the first big day for our local hospital. And we have a new owner in the community, and it's Munson Healthcare. And there's a lot of people in the community who work at that hospital who have their lives changed today, including our patients. And I think that it's going to be something wonderful for our community. And just wanted to give a shout out for that. I really very much appreciated Mike Solomon's presentation this evening. I think that there's a lot of concern in this area. I'm not knowledgeable of it, but I'm hoping, Marcus, that perhaps we can put the right group of people together to think about how we take this information, the things that he's shared, and move it forward in a positive direction so we're making an impact for the future. What that looks like, I don't know, but I think that people would really appreciate knowing that the right group of people are put together to be able to make an impact. And I did appreciate the thought of having consistency of special meetings. You know, in my first year here, that I've just finished, you know, I may have caused some of that inconsistency in special meetings, not understanding how the council necessarily has done it in the past. And if it was me, I apologize for that. But, you know, moving forward, I think consistency in everything that we do is good. The meeting on Monday, I was very ill, and I felt badly that I couldn't attend. And my understanding was we didn't have a quorum. But even if we had had 3, it was a goal-setting session. And so my thought was, you know, if we don't have all of us there, how can we really meet with the staff and come up with those goals that are important to this whole crew? And so, you know, with a goal-setting session, you know, I'm kind of glad we didn't have it with only part of the group there. Even if I had been one of those people, I think it's important that all 5 of us are sitting at the table when that happens. So hopefully the next time we schedule it, everybody's healthy and everybody's family is healthy and we can all be here. So, so I know it's frustrating when schedules change, but it was just a lot of things happening that I think it was just like the perfect storm. So, and I do have one last thing, and that's to wish our attorney, Mike Homier, happy birthday. This is how he spent his birthday today. Yes. So with
It's Groundhog Day.
A groundhog always overshadows you in this.
okay, and then one last thing. Finally, I'm so excited at the new volunteers and the new appointments that are being made to the boards. They're filling up, and people are volunteering, and I think that's wonderful. Cadillac, that's one of the things I talked about this weekend with the legislative people, was that Cadillac is such a giving community, giving of their time, giving of their resources. And in a lot of communities, people just stand back and point out what's wrong. But in Cadillac, people look at it, they see a problem, and they head right towards it. They don't, for the most part, step away from it. And I really appreciate that. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Everybody have a good evening and a week.